Welcome students. Today we are going to discuss botanical gardens. Botanic gardens can be defined as public gardens which maintain collections of live plants, mainly for study, scientific research, conservation and education. Now the question arises, how do botanic gardens differ from a park? Botanic gardens usually have labeled plants that provides information about the plant's local name, scientific name, family, special features, uses and parts used, etc. Sometimes the labels may give us more information about when and where the plant is collected, its habitat, range of distribution, etc. A botanic garden can broadly be called a living repository of plants arranged and maintained on some scientific basis, and where the collections are usually labeled or marked for identification. Botanic gardens, public gardens, parks and other greeneries form an effective network of conservation of plants of utility and aesthetic value, besides their role in protecting ecological balance, preventing environmental degradation and maintaining a pollution-free natural atmosphere. Thus, botanic gardens are ideal places to teach people about the richness of the plant kingdom, the intricate relationships that plants have developed with their environment, how human beings use plants economically, culturally and aesthetically. Now, we will discuss types of botanical gardens. The major types of botanic gardens in the world are: number 1, classic multipurpose gardens are often institutions which are actively engaged in horticulture and horticultural training, research, particularly in taxonomy with associated herbaria and laboratories, and public education and amenity. They are generally state supported. Number 2, ornamental gardens. They have diverse plant collections and nicely documented. They may or may not currently have research, education or conservation roles. Some ornamental gardens are privately owned. Number 3, historical gardens. These have a role in teaching of medicine. Some were established for religious purposes. These gardens are now actively engaged in medicinal plant conservation and research. Number 4, conservation gardens. These gardens have recently been developed in response to local needs for plant conservation. They have natural vegetation in addition to their cultivated collections. Number 5, university gardens. These are maintained by the university authorities and have a role in teaching and research. Number 6, combined botanical and zoological gardens are currently reassessing the roles of their botanical collections. Plant collections are being researched and developed that provide habitats for the displayed fauna, and interpretation of these habitats to the general public is an important element. Number 7, agrobotanical and germplasm gardens function as an ex situ collection of plants of economic value or potential for conservation, research, plant breeding and agriculture. Number 8, alpine or mountain gardens are most frequently in mountain regions of Europe and some tropical countries and are meant for cultivation of mountain and alpine flora. Number 9, natural or wild gardens. These are confined to an area or natural or semi-natural vegetation which is protected and managed Number 10. Horticultural gardens. These are regulated by the horticultural departments and are also open to public. Number 11. Thematic gardens. These specialize in growing a limited range of related or morphologically similar plants or plants grown to illustrate a particular theme, generally in support of education, science, conservation, and public display. These include orchid, rose, rhododendron, bamboo, and succulent, or gardens established on such themes as ethnobotany, medicine, bonsai, topiary, butterfly gardens, carnivorous plants, and aquatics. Number 12. Community gardens are generally small gardens with limited resources developed for and by a local community to fulfill its particular needs, such as recreation, education, conservation, horticultural training, medicinal and other economic plants. Apart from these, some special types of botanical gardens are: number 1. Arboretum. They are botanical gardens or parts of botanical gardens where mainly arboreal or woody plants, for example, Carleton Arboretum, Northfield, USA, Horslum Arboretum, Denmark. Coniferatum or Pineatum is an arboretum or its parts where only conifers are grown. Salictum is an arboretum or its part where willows are maintained. Rosetum or rosary is an arboretum or its part where roses are maintained. Number 2. Orchidarium. It is a garden or its part where only orchids are grown. For example, National Orchidarium at Botanical Survey of India, Shillong. Number 3. Bamboo stem. It is a garden or its part where the main collection is of bamboos, as in the Indian Botanical Garden, Kolkata, and Forest Research Institute Botanical Garden, Dehradun. Now, we will discuss distribution of botanic gardens. At present, there are about 2,487 botanical gardens and arboreta in the world, receiving over 100 million visitors per year. A large number are located in Europe and a good number of botanical gardens are found in Italy, including the University Botanical Gardens. Thus, Italy boasts a historic first with respect to botanical gardens, most of which were founded in the second half of 18th century and in the 19th century. Among the world's botanic gardens, approximately 60% are situated in temperate regions in North America, Europe, and the countries of the former Soviet Union. Now, we will discuss networking of botanic gardens. With worldwide increase in the botanic gardens, it was felt that instead of existing in isolation, they need to form an alliance and be part of other such institutions. Thus, links between them have been developed at the national, regional, and international levels. These links facilitate the development of a network of cooperative gardens with specific objectives. Networks between botanic gardens are increasingly seen as important for capacity building. They have also supported the creation of new botanic gardens that will be instrumental in ex situ conservation of the ever-increasing number of plant species facing the threat of extinction. It is now stressed that strengthening their global network and linking it closely to others working to safeguard the biodiversity must be the most important and urgent task of botanic gardens. The key purpose of networks involving botanic gardens are to provide a forum for policy development, devise projects involving several institutional partners, raise funds from a variety of donors, prepare guidelines and codes of conduct for member gardens, organize events, meetings and training courses, and disseminate all the information about activities of the network. As regards existing botanic garden networks, the two major of their network organizations operating worldwide are: number 1, International Association of Botanical Gardeners, IABG, formed in 1954 with the ultimate aims of promoting international cooperation between botanic gardeners, plant taxonomy, conservation, documentation and exchange of information, and number 2, Botanic Gardens Conservation International, BGCI, founded by the International Union for Conservation of Nature in 1987. It is a Kiev-based charitable organization with the ultimate aims of promoting and coordinating ex situ conservation activities and environmental education programs at the global level. Many new botanic garden networks have been established during the last 2 decades at the continental, regional and national levels. Now, we will throw light on great botanic gardens. The World Botanic Gardens have a very long history and tradition in the field of education, and still many are closely associated with universities. The first gardens founded in Europe at Poggia and Pisa were created specifically as gardens for the cultivation of medicinal plants for use in teaching of medicine at the ancient city universities, and later one such as Oxford Botanical Garden was established for the teaching of botany as a separate science from medicine. During the 17th century, medicine had shown tremendous development and a large number of botanical gardens were further established in different parts of the world, including various universities, mainly with the purpose of displaying for medicinal use. Now, we will discuss world's largest botanical garden. The world's largest botanical garden is the Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew. Originally, it was belonged to the Kew House owned by Richard Bennett. But after the death of Princess Augusta in 1772, it was united with the gardens of the Palace of Richmond, and the extensive area of the two gardens was later taken over by the government in 1838 and became named as Royal Botanical Gardens, which was originally established in 1760 but officially opened in 1841. Its first curator was William Ayton. Sir William Jackson Hooker later took over as director of the garden in the same year. He was succeeded by Joseph Dalton Hooker and later by Thistleton Dyer. At present, this garden includes a herbarium consisting of over 5 million specimens, which was established by W. J. Hooker, who also introduced a greenhouse and a palm house. A rhododendron garden was introduced by J. D. Hooker, and an alpine house, a rose garden, bamboo garden, and a lily pond by T. Dreyer. Its arboretum has over 7,000 species and glass houses over 13,000 species. It also has a laboratory which provides research facilities to botanists from various fields. Some of the other remarkable features of this garden include a Chelsea physique garden and the world's best rock garden. The main inclusion in its plant layout are in the oak, cedar, elm, willows, lilacs, pine, azaleas, cypress, thuja, redwood, fern, etc. Some of the famous publications of this garden include Flora of British India, Index Cavenensis, and Kew Bulletin. Now we will discuss major botanic gardens in India, early history and its role in plant conservation. Number 1. The Indian Botanic Garden, Kolkata, formerly known as the East India Company's Garden. It is situated at Howrah on the west bank of river Hooghly. Robert Cade proposed for the establishment of this garden for horticultural and economically important plants. He himself had a private garden wherein he grew plants of economic importance. His proposal was endorsed by the East India Company in 1787 and he became the honorary superintendent of the new garden, wherein he introduced many economically important plants including cardamom, pepper, nutmeg, cotton, tobacco, indigo, coffee, sago, and teak. William Roxburgh was appointed as the first salaried superintendent of this garden in 1793. Besides his interest in the development of the garden, he laid the foundation of taxonomy in India and established a large herbarium. During his tenureship, he published Hortus Bengalensis in 1814 and Flora Indica in 1824. Hence, he is rightly called as the father of Indian botany. The introduction of tea is another great chapter of the history of the Indian Botanic Garden. Though tea was successfully cultivated in the Indian Botanic Garden from China, it had not received sufficient interest among commercial circles for the development of tea as a plantation crop. Therefore, tea exploration and other collection work in the gigantic plain began. During these extensive explorations, about 9,000 specimens and a large number of plants were collected. In 1853, cinchona trees were introduced in the garden and its cultivation was recommended in the Nilgiri hills. The seeds were brought from Kew and several species of cinchona were raised in the botanic garden. This helped to a large extent in alleviating malarial fever. The botanists under various provincial governments united into an organization later called Botanical Survey of India in 1890. The Indian Botanic Garden in Howrah is well known throughout the world as one of the best landscape botanical gardens where natural scenic beauty is preserved. Unlike other gardens in India, which turned into either horticultural gardens or fruit gardens under the aegis of agricultural departments, this garden preserves the best collections of native and exotic species and several endangered ones. Compared to other gardens, there is less concrete and masonry inside the garden, and there are more plants and canopy of trees. The garden is proud of its rich collections of palms, bamboos, pandanus, and bougainvilleas, besides the well-known great banyan tree and the large palm house. Over 15,000 trees and shrubs distributed under 2,350 species together with several thousand herbaceous plants are in cultivation in the open in 25 divisions. 5 glass houses and 5 greenhouses and conservatories, 1 octagonal glass house for growing cacti and succulents, and 1 massive greenhouse are under construction and planning, respectively. The garden maintains germplasm collections of bamboos, bougainvilleas, stress, jasmines, palms, pandanus, water lilies, etc. The Indian Botanical Garden and the network of experimental gardens are treated as the main conservation centers in India. Number 2. National Botanical Garden, Lucknow. This garden, situated on the banks of river Gomti, was established in 1789 by the Emperor Nawab Saadat Ali Khan. It was named as Sikandar Bagh by Nawab Wajid Ali Shah in remembrance of his beloved wife Begum Sikandar Mahal. It was converted into a botanical garden in 1946 with Professor K.N. Kaul as its first director and is now known as National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, which is one of the important national laboratories under the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. The main garden covers an area of 30 kilometers and is famous for its palm house, fern house, rosarium, cactus house, orchid house, orchards of mango, guava and stress, and medicinal plant sections. Number 3. Lal Bagh Garden, Bangalore. This is the best botanical garden in South India, which was named Lal Bagh by Hyder Ali in 1760 because of its beautiful rose garden and red flowers. Its first director was Major Wagh, who introduced a number of exotic plants from various countries into this garden. Later, this garden was converted to proper botanical garden in 1856 and Rao Bahadur H.C. Jairaja was its first Indian director. The garden has 2 greenhouses. The floral clock, which has been installed in the garden in 1983, is the first of its kind in India and the second in Asia. Number 4. Botanical Garden of Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. This garden was established at Dehradun in 1934 by C. E. Parkinson. It covers an area of 20 acres and is the major center of research in problems related to plant introduction. It now has about 700 different species of plants from different countries of the world, a greenhouse, a bamboo stand, a cacti house, and a plant introductory nursery. It has a large herbarium attached with it. Now, we will discuss main activities of botanic gardens. The main activities of botanic gardens are: number 1, biodiversity conservation and related studies. Under this heading, the following points are to be studied. First, studies on biology of introduced plants in culture. Second, establishment of gene banks of indigenous plants, including seed banks and plant tissue cultures. Third, development of herbaria and research on plant systematics. Fourth, reintroduction of plant species back to nature and research on restoration of their natural habitats. Fifth, monitoring and assessment studies of the environmental pollution influence on vegetation and plants. Sixth, scientific studies of indigenous plants conservation and restoration of rare and endangered species. And seventh, involvement of local community in environmental conservation and decision making on plant protection. Number 2, development of scientific basis for the rational use of plant resources. Under this heading, the following points are to be studied. First, cultivation of diverse plant collection. Second, research on ethnobotany and traditional use of plants. Third, research on horticulture and gardening. Fourth, integrated pest and disease management. Fifth, laboratory research including plant propagation in vitro. Sixth, evaluation and introduction of new genetic resources of edible plants in culture. Seventh, ornamental horticulture and floriculture. Eighth, cultivation, propagation and conservation of cultivars including ancient ones. And ninth, city planning and greening land use. Number 3, education and public awareness promotion. Under this heading, the following points are to be studied. First, environmental education programs. Second, professional development, internship in botany, horticulture and ecology. Third, public libraries and information centers. Fourth, facilities for recreation and rehabilitation. Fifth, teacher training. And sixth, promotion of ecological tourism. Seventh, publication of special and scientific popular literature. Eighth, consulting of visitors. Ninth, distance learning. And 10th, involvement of mass media in public awareness promotion. Dear students, this is all about botanical gardens. Thank you very much.